Okay, good day. Today's daf is daf Mem Vav in Masechah Chullin. We are about 6 lines up from the bottom of Mem Hey Amud Bet, and we are describing different parts of the animal's body in order to determine whether or not a treifa exists. And so we are up to Ad Hechan. It's the beginning of the sixth line from the bottom of Mem Hey Amud Bet. And the question that we're going to be dealing with to start is what is considered the spine? We know that our Mishnah, at the opening Mishnah in the third parak of Chullin, said that specifically if the spine was broken and the cord severed, so then that would constitute an animal that was a treifa. So how far does the spine go? Meaning how far along the back of the animal does the spine go? For example, if we just focused on the bony structure, maybe some of the tail would even be considered part of the spine, and presumably that would not be considered part of the spine that, if severed, would constitute a treifa, because animals can lose their tails and still live. So where is that line? That's what we're going to be asking. So at Hechan chut hashidra, how far does a spinal cord extend such that the severing of it would constitute a treifa? So Amar of Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, ad bein haparashot, until between the parashot. And Rashi helps us out with what the parashot are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up from the very bottom of Rashi, halfway through the line. Ad bein haparashot, ad makom shehu mitparesh umitpatzel petulin, that until the place where the cord itself separates and divides into different branches, keneged hayirakim, next to the thighs, meaning where at the very back hind legs of the animal, the spinal cord goes down and breaks into pieces or divides into different branches, and where it starts to branch, that's going to be certainly part of the spine. Hu matchili patzel, it begins to, continuing on in this Rashi, begins to divide. V'yotze rosh echad liyerek zu, v'echad lezu, one end will then go down one leg, the other end will go down the other leg. V'hamtzi yored lezanav, and the middle one will continue on to the tail. Ulama'ata otan meotan pitzulin, and beneath those divides, meaning there is further divides, keneged shtei etzbaot, hu chozer umitbatzel od legimel. That basically you envision, for example, you have a line down, and then you have a branch out, but then you have the middle cord continuing. And then from that middle cord, again, you have a branching out and the middle cord continuing. And then you have a branching out and the middle cord continuing. So we're going to see that that is what is continuing to go on with the spinal cord. So that continues to go on. And let's continue on Rashi. Ulamata meotam pitzulan keneged shtei etzbaot hu chozer umitbatzel od legimel. Right? Ulamata mehen od mitbatzel v'chein baharbe mekomot ad sofo. Right? It keeps branching out multiple times. V'im nisak min hamoach. If between the brain, the ad bein haprashot, until this point where we're calling between the branches, halalu kol shenifsak sham rubo trefa. Anywhere where a majority of it would have been severed, that is going to constitute a trefa. V'im lamata, but if below that point, mi bein haprashos, below that spot that we're going to call between the branches, nifsak kvar toshesh kocho, the power and the strength of the spinal cord has weakened such, so the legs themselves hold up the spine, and so as a result, the breaking at that point will not constitute the death of an animal, and therefore would not constitute a treifa. So Rav Dimi bar Yitzchak Hava Kaboy Lemeza Lebe Chozai. So Rav Dimi was said going to the town of Beit Chozai, also lekame de Rav Yehuda, and he came in front of Rav Yehuda. Amrle, he said to him, Licha veli mar bein haparashos hecha. So before I go, essentially, he's saying, because he's on about to leave on a trip, show me, my teacher, where is this bein haparashos? Amarle zil iti li gedi ba'achavelach. Go get a baby goat, and I'll show it to you. The Itile Gedish Mena. So he brought him a fat baby goat. Amarle, Biliyat Tfeilo Vilo Yadia. You can't really see it so well. I don't know exactly where it is because it's too far underneath the fat. Itile Kacho. So he brought him a really thin one. Amarle, Bilitan Tfei Vilo Yadia. It's the bones are protruding so much from the fact that it's so thin. I can't tell this one either. So Amrle, so he said to him, "Listen, Ta Agmara Gemara. I'm going to teach you the tradition. Hachi Amar Shmuel. This is what Shmuel said. Ad Achad Achas Treifa. Until the first branching, it is going to be a treifa, and Shlishis." After the third branching of the spinal cord, well, then it's definitely going to be kosher if that's where the break is. Shnia ainiyodeh. But in the second, after the second branch, but before that third branch, I'm not sure. So by Rav Huna, braid to Rav Yoshua. So Rav Huna asked an important question in this context. Ad v'ad bichlal. When you said until the first, does that mean until the moment that the branching happens? Or does it mean even between the branches, meaning it's really effectively until the second branching? So, Odil ma'ad v'lo ad b'chlal. Or maybe until does not include it, and so it would literally end at when we say at the first branch, until between the first branches, it means until the branching happens. So, by Rav Papa, and Rav Papa asked, or ad velo ad b'chlal. And if you say that when we say it means until, it does not include the branching, it's the post the branch, it means just at the moment that it starts to separate, that would be the first branch, and the second separation would be the second, etc. And as opposed to if we mean between the first branches means the entire area between the first branches until a second branch occurs. So that would be the potential difference between these two views. But if you say so it ends at that first branching. So parasha mahu. What about the area of the branching itself? Would that also be included, or would it not be included? And by Rabbi Yirmiyah asked in the other direction. Im tim selomar ad ve'ad bichlal. And if you say that everything's included, parasha atzma mahu. What about the next branch itself? Is that included in it, or is that part of the next grouping? So those are the questions. Toso Tashma, come in here. We'll explain how we could answer this. Ha parasha tidon kvasar. That maybe we can say the following: that we have a rule that the branch is considered like meat, meaning that just as meat that has a cut in it, it doesn't make the animal a treifa, so too the branch itself, if it's got a cut in it, it's not going to make it a treifa. So my lav prasha rishona ushnia, doesn't this imply that every cut would be okay once it branched off, meaning that it would be ad velo ad bichlal, and it would become that the only time it would be a treifa is from the brain until the first branching? Lo shlishit. No, it could mean that statement of haparashat tedun kavasar, that you should judge the separation, the branches, as if they were meat. That's only after the third branching. And so as a result, we have not successfully answered the question, and therefore it's unclear, and we would therefore need to be strict in terms of what would constitute considered a breakage. And therefore a treifa. Be'ofa, when it comes to a bird, Rabbi Yanai Omer, and now the Hagos Habach adds the word ad here. ad lamata min ha'agapayim, from below where the wings are. So meaning from the head until where the wings lay. Now, Tosos here notes that actually it's not clear. What do we mean where the wings are attached or where the wings lie on the body? And that's not completely clear. And Tosos notes that fact here. But in any event, V'reish Lakish Amar ad bein agapayim. No, it doesn't mean until below where the wings attach, but until where the wings attach. And I'll note that the Masoras Hashas reverses these two opinions, which would make, it seems that based on our read of our Gemara in front of us, Reish Lakish would be the more lenient viewpoint because he limits the size of the spinal cord, and therefore a break below that would not constitute a treifa, whereas according to the Masoras Hashas, based on the viewpoint of the Rif and the Rush, they would switch it, and he would Reish Lakish would be the more strict one, and he would say ad lamata min hagapayim. So, but in any event, whichever viewpoint you go by, we have these two viewpoints. So Amar Ula. Hava Ka'amina Kamei de Ben Pazi. I was once in front of Rav Pazi, Ben Pazi, but Aitu Kamei Ofa, and they brought him a bird. Uvadak ad bein agapayim, and he only checked until between the wings. He did not check to lamata between the wings. V'shalach le de bein nesiya, and then he went to he was summoned to the Beit Nasi, the Kamva Azul, and he got up and he left. V'lo yadana, and I don't know. Was he done with the checking when he got to between the wings? Or was that when he was called and therefore you can't necessarily tell? O mishum kavod nasiya, or did he stop in the middle out of the deference to the nasi? So we don't know, and so as a result, again, we would need to be strict on this front. Okay, so now at the two dots on Mem Vav Amud Aleph, and we say nitla hakaved, the liver was removed, and as we saw a few days ago, there is a debate, and that debate is going to happen right now because there seems to be an inconsistency between our Mishnah and another Mishnah, because our Mishnah seems to suggest that the liver was removed, and it says specifically nothing remains. So what's the implication? So take a look. We're now at the two dots. Hanishdayer heimena klum kshera. If anything is left, then it would be kosher. Afagav delo havi kazayas, even if it's not a full olive's volume worth. V'hatanan, but 1 second, we've got a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah down on Nun Dalid Omid Aleph, and it says Nital hakavid v'nishtar heimena kazayas kshera. It says that when there's at least an olive's volume left, that's when it's kosher. So that implies that you need to have an olive's volume, and if you don't have an olive's volume, then it would be considered a treifa. So Amar Rav Yosef lo kasha ha Rabbi Chia ha Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe. One is the view of Rabbi Chia, and one is the view of Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe. So which one is which? So kihai Kihad, Rabbi Chia Zarikla, because there was a situation where Rabbi Chia would throw it away. The Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe matbila, and Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe, he would dip it. So which way does that necessarily go? So there are two ways that we can understand it. Sort of the simplest way to understand it is that Rabbi Chia would say that, look, if there is any in order for it to not be a treifa, there must be at least an olive's volume left, and therefore I'm throwing this away because there isn't an olive's volume left. Whereas Rabbi Shimon would say, no, even when there is not an olive's volume left, as long as there's something left, that's still going to be kosher, and therefore I'm going to be able to eat it. That would be sort of the simplest way. But Rashi has a problem with that. So because why are we using this language of zarik and matbil, of throwing it away and dipping it? Let's take a look. Rashi matbil, third to last of the medium wide lines. Matbila ochla, the kol he would eat it. The kol ma'achlam al yedei tibul, chometz, charoses, and people would eat these things by dipping it into some kind of vinegar or some kind of charosis-like dip. Kach shamati, that's what I've heard. But he now raises the problem. Aval nira be'enai, but it seems to me, de be'isr veheter, tarif umachsher. When it comes to the whether or not this is permitted or prohibited or permitted, we should be using a language of treifa, that he made it into a treifa, umakasher, or he said that it was kosher, havashayach. That's the language that it should have used. Lemitne, that in this Gemara, v'zarik umatbil lo shayach bay. At this kind of language of throwing it away and dipping it doesn't seem to be the relevant umistavra, and therefore I think the following: Dahachikamer. Here's what it's trying to say. Actually, Rabbi Chia Zarik la lekave shall kol behema. He would throw away every liver because he did not see the liver as something that was healthy or healthful. V'lo haya ochlo. He would never eat it. Delo havachashiv. It wasn't an important element of the food. For Rabbi Shimon, matbilai, but Rabbi Shimon would dip it and eat it. To afal gav de lav basarhu, because even though it's not actually meat, ka'achale, he would eat it mishum briusa, because of its health properties. To kasavar neshama tuluyabo, because he believed that the neshama was dependent on it. And ikedekaimalam brachot, as we see in Masechet Brachot, kol nefesh meshiv nefesh. Anything that gives life brings life. And so as a result, that's the advantage of eating meat. Ukeda amrinan harotzeb sheyavri. If you want to be healthy, chote kazayas basar, kodem shetetze nafsha. That's why you should grab a piece of the animal before it has completely died, after you've done the shechita, when it's considered dead, but it's still moving. And that's the point is that that's the same kind of thinking, that if it's got some motion in it, that it has health properties. Hilkach imlonish dire kazayas. And so as a result, it is actually Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe who says that there needs to be a kazayas. And if there wasn't a kazayas, lahalos arucha, sheyakzor v'yirapeh treifa, that you need, that then that's what you need in order for it to get back to life. Rabbi Chia lo boy, you don't need that amount. Kedei la'alot arucha ela sheyura porta makom talia demara desheyura b'makom mara be'inan kilakaman. And whereas Rabbi Chia says no, all you need is any amount as long as it's connected in the right location, as we will discuss. And so actually, as it turns out, it is Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe who says that you need to have at least a kazayas, and Rabbi Chia who says that even the smallest amount would be sufficient. Okay, so now back into the Gemara. We are back basically smack in the middle of the middle lines. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines under the 2 dots of Hanishtayer, of the Nitla HaKaved section, and we say Hahu Pilmosa. So we have this. I'm sorry. We didn't do the one line up from that. The Simanayech. The Siman. How can you remember which view was which? Ashirin Mekamsin. That the wealthy are Mekamsin. Rashi tells us Mekamsin is Ashir Mekamsin. It tells us Rabbi Shimon ben Rebbe beno shel Nasi Haya, that Rabbi Shimon was the son of the Nasi, and so he was very wealthy. Umekamsan umekametz lashon atzran, and the language of kamatz here is a language of thriftiness, of holding back. And so as a result, the idea is that the wealthy Rabbi Shimon, he was the one who would be more likely to eat it. And so as a result, he's the one, that's how we remember which opinion says that they're going to eat it. And therefore, again, as Rashi described it, which view is it that says that you would eat it because it's healthy? That would be the view that says that it needs to be at least an olive's volume in order for it to be able to regenerate, and therefore, if it's less than an olive's volume, it would constitute a treifa. Okay, so hahu pulmusa de asa lepumpadisa. So pulmusa, Rashi tells us is chel hashalton, the army of the rulership. And so this royal army was came to Pumpadisa. And so what happened there? So Arku, Rabba, Rav Yosef, Rabba and Rav Yosef ran away. Paga Bahu Rebbe Zera. So Rebbe Zera encountered them. So Amr Lahu. So he said to them, Arokai, fugitives, Kizayas Sha'amru B'makom Mara. That when it says that you need to have a kazayas, it's talking about in the place where the gallbladder is located. That meaning that it's not just that you have an olive's volume of liver anywhere. It can't just be separated and somewhere and unattached to the rest of the body. It needs to be next to the gallbladder. Now, that is not the universal viewpoint. Rav Ada Barahava Amar b'makom shehi chaya. No, it needs to be in the place where it lives. And Rashi tells us 5 lines up from the bottom of Rashi for the beginning of the line, b'makom shehu chaya, shehakaved chaya misham, that is where the liver gets its connection to life. Dahainu makam tal yasa kishehi me'orad dvuka tachas haklayot. And this is a place where it is hanging underneath the kidneys and is connected to the kidneys. Zen nearly. That's my opinion. Umatzatziv lishna achwina. I found another language that says bioseres hakaved uvrish balaz behain tarafshin. This is my understanding is that refers to the diaphragm, and so as a result, there are 2 different possibilities for what this makom shehichaya is. But in any event, Amar Rav Papa, because we have these 2 possibilities, either the point where it's lives or the point where it's connected to the gallbladder. And Rav Papa says, Hilkach be'inan kazayas b'makom mara u'be'inan kazayas b'makom sheichai. We need a kazayas in both places for the animal to be considered a survivable animal. Otherwise, it would be a treifa. So by Reb Yirmiyah asked, Mitlaket mahu. What if it was like a line and it was not so this kazayas was not just all in a single lump, but was rather it was cut up v'lo makom echad el chatzi kazayas kan v'chatzi kazayas kan. Sorry, Rashi. I should have said I was going to Rashi. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines up. What happens if it's distributed in multiple locations? So is that considered? Do we combine the 2 together? Kiritsua mahu. What if it's like a strip, meaning not in in a ball as condensed as possible, but rather spread out, even if it's all attached. So by Rav Ashi, kazayas merudad mahu. What if it's flattened? So it may not be maybe a circle, but it's a flat circle, not a 3-dimensional sphere. So in all of those cases, teku, it's not completely clear. We would have to hold that it is considered a treifa and therefore not kosher. So, by mine Rabbi Zrika, Rabbi Ami. So, Rabbi Zrika asked Rabbi Ami, Nidaldula kaved umeora tarpshe mahu. What if it became loose, but it's still connected to the diaphragm? So, Amar le dildul zeh eini yodea mahu. Listen, I'm not sure what the issue would be with it becoming loose. If it's we're talking about a place that it needs to be connected to the gallbladder, it's still connected to the gallbladder. And and if you say that it needs to be connected to the place from which it gets its life, it's connected, it's that it has its vitality through there. So then that is also is it's still connected. Just because it's loose doesn't mean that anything's wrong. And so as a result, the answer would appear to be that in that situation, it would not be a treifa at all. Okay, so now we're at the next two dots. One, two, three, four, five, six, 7 lines up from the bottom of the Mem Vav Amud Aleph. Hareya shenikva. We saw that if a lung has a puncture, then it's going to be a treifa. So Rav Ushmuel Rav Asi to Amri Karma Ilah. Rav and Shmuel and Rav Asi all say that we're talking about the outer membrane that has the puncture. V'amrila karma tata. But others say, no, that's not what they said. They said it was the inner membrane. And we're going to see that that's going to be what we're focusing on. Amar of Yosef bar Menyumi, Amar of Nachman, the simanech, the reminder of how you can remember the mnemonic, kituna devarda demancha be reya. Think about a kituna, a tunic, a varda that is red, that demancha that is resting, where that the lungs are resting in. And so, as Rashi tells us, kituna devarda malvush adom. Think about a red garment, shahareya munachas that the this is second to last line of the daf, that the lung is resting in. And Varda, what it has the term Varda, al shem shekarum tachton adom. We're going to see in a moment that the underlayer of the lower layer of the lung is red, and so that's why we focus on the redness. Who? Kida Amrin Lakaman, as we are about to see at the top of the next daf, Kahina Sumka, that we're going to note the fact that the inner layer of the lung is like a red date. So pshita. So back into the Gemara. So what is this telling us? What is review? You know, you know. I'm sorry. My apologies. It's not asking a question, but rather it's making the following statement. Pshita again, third line from the bottom of Mem Vav Amud Aleph. Pshita inkiv ilah v'lo inkiv tata magin. It's clear that if in the outer membrane has the hole, but the inner membrane does not, so the inner membrane is going to protect the lungs, and so as a result, it's going to be not a problem. Rava, as Rava says, to Amar Rava, and again, this the fact that it's Rava is indicated in the Masoras Hashas, and so that is what that's based on. The Amar Rava, Hi Reya Iglid. If you have a lung that was peeled, and now we turn to Memvav Amud Bet, Ka'ahina Sumka, and so it looks like a red date, because of course, again, the inner layer is red, so now the outer layer has been peeled away. Kshera, that is kosher. It is not considered a treifa if you are effectively missing a part of the outer membrane. So inkiv tata below inkiv ilah. But now my question for you, I've told you what's obvious, that if the outer is has a hole, but the inner is not, it's going to be fine. But what if the inkiv tata, if the underlayer, the inner layer has a hole, the low inkiv ilah, but the outer layer does not? Magin or lo magin? Does the outer layer provide the protection or not? So pligi ba Rav Acha v'Ravina. So Rav Acha and Ravina argue about it. Chad Amar lo megin, v'chad Amar megin. One says that it does, and one says that it does not protect it. And so as a result, v'hilchasa megin. And the halacha is that it does is considered protection to the Rav Huna, to the Rav Yosef, as Rav Yosef says. The Amar Rav Yosef, Hai Reya de Avsha, there was a lung that was making some noise. So, if you know the location where that noise was coming from, meaning there is some kind of air seepage that is happening in the lung, because we could hear it happening. So, Mosvin Allah Gadfa Oroka Ogila. You can put on that spot either a feather or a little bit of spit, or Gila, Rashi tells us, is kash, the fourth line down in the Rashi on Mem Vav Amud Bet, that it's straw. If it bubbles, so that indicates that you've actually found a real hole. Trefa, well then it's a trefa. The ilo, but if it does not bubble, kshera, well then it is kosher. It does not have a hole in it. The ilo yadin hecha avsha, and if we don't know where it's making the noise from, well then maisinan misichlota demaya pshure. Then we bring a basin and some warm water, some lukewarm water, umosvinan la begava, and we put it inside and now b'chamimi lo dechavtze. We're not going to put it in hot water because that would shrink. And a number of ways to understand what it means here. I'm understanding it that it would shrink the hole. In fact, Rashi says the Kadson law, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi, the Kadson law, the Hanekev Nistam, it'll cause the hole to be filled up, to be closed. The Ein Zu B'dika Yafen, so it won't be a good check. Oh, and Bikariri lo dimitarshe, and we don't want to use cold water because that causes it to stiffen. And Rashi helps us. Dimitarshila makashin, it becomes hard. Ota ke'evin, like a stone. Ve'im ein sham nekev, and if there was no hole, bikarum ha'elyon, in the upper, v'yesh nekev bitachton, but there was a hole in the bottom, in the lower level, which again, as we just saw, it would be kosher in that situation. Mitkara helyon, you could end up with a tear in the outer as well. Machmashahu kalush, because it had hardened. Umayim hakarim motchin, and the cold water will cause a stretching. Ota shekisha mitkasha, when it becomes hard. Shekorin dairish. So the bottom line is that the cold water might actually cause a tear that didn't exist. Elamos vinam bipshuri. So that's why, again, you have to bring the lukewarm water. V'nafchinala, and we blow into it. Trefa, and if the water bubbles, well then it's a trefa. The ilo kshera, and if not, it's a kosher. And what was the sound that was making? Tata inkav, inkiv ilah, lo inkiv. It's a situation where the inner must have been punctured and the outer was not. V'hai da avsha zika de beini beinihu. And what was making the noise was the sound between those two membranes. And so as a result, it was, in fact, there was a hole, it just didn't go all the way through. And so that's why it would not be considered a trefa. And that shows that Rav Yosef says that as long as the outer layer is okay, it's going to be kosher. And that confirms that the lenient view between Rav Acha and Ravina is going to be our view and is the way we're going to hold. So next is we're going to have now a series of statements by Rava. These statements are going to continue well into tomorrow's daf, but we'll do the first 5 or 6 of them, 5 of them today, and then we'll pick up with the rest of them, God willing, tomorrow. So, but the first 4 of them have a mnemonic. Ahine sumka deyavesh gilde siman, that dates that are red, dried, and scabs, that